So our heroine finds herself in a dark corridor. The score volumes down, and as she looks around blind corners, the ambient sound swells, and suddenly we can hear her breathing until... well, you know what happens next. But why? Well, because you've seen a movie or two before. And because of that, this particular horror movie doesn't have to explain to you that you should be anticipating something being loud and jumping out. It can use shorthand. It's like how every time attention is drawn to a character coughing, we can be sure that they're actually quite sick. Or when an overworked woman bumps into a man and drops her papers and he helps her pick up. They're probably going to fall in love. That one even has a name. It's called a meet cute. Generally speaking, any given film won't be the first film an audience has seen, and the cinema has been plagued with cliches since the dawn of time. So when writing a screenplay, a lot of unnecessary exposition can be saved by using this kind of film shorthand. But it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Maybe your audience hasn't just seen a lot of movies, maybe they've seen a lot of your movies. If you've developed a reputation for having twists at the end of all of your movies, then having an audience full of Sherlock Holmes who are trying to pre-solve the twist can really reduce its impact. So relying too heavily on this kind of film shorthand is a surefire way for you to get the complaint that your film was too predictable. Another film shorthand with a proper name is the Chekhov's gun, which states that every element in a story should be necessary, and unnecessary elements should be removed. So if we see someone at the beginning of your movie putting a rifle over the top of the fireplace, then before that movie's over, that rifle needs to go off.
God, I said the cap slips off the poison pen for no reason, didn't I?
I know, but I just assumed that if anything bad happened, it
No,
would be...
do not say the Chekhov gun, Cyril. Sir, is a facile argument.
So for instance, in James Cameron's Avatar, Neytiri tells Jake Sully that although everybody rides the pterodactyls, only the bravest and greatest warriors have ever ridden the big super scary juiced up pterodactyls. And you can probably guess what happens before the movie's over. Now, a clever writer can use these kind of film shorthands to their advantage by writing a script that assumes the audience has seen movies before. They can avoid being overly predictable, but they can also use the audience's assumptions against them. In the anime Black Butler, Ciel's family is murdered and he's left to die. But before he does, he offers a demon his soul to eat in exchange for revenge, and the demon, Sebastian, agrees. Over the course of the story, the two become a buddy cop pairing and they grow to be very fond of each other. And if you've seen Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, or any of its million remakes, then you've seen how this generally ends. There's something driving a wedge between the characters in the beginning of the story.
How do I know you won't let me fall after you grab the rope?
But they grow so fond of each other over the course of the story that at the end, rather than part ways, they decide to remain friends.
Boom, baby!
Boom, baby!
So what happens after Ciel and Sebastian find the murderers and get revenge? Sebastian eats Ciel's soul. The story hopes that you'll assume that Sebastian would never do such a thing, and so the biggest twist is that there is no twist. The twist that you were sure was coming.
So will it hurt?
It will a bit. I'm sorry.
And the thing about film shorthand is that the lexicon is growing every day. A relatively new addition is the one I like to call Iron Gianting. Let's see if you can guess what it is. The Iron Giant is a story about a boy and his robot. After hilarity ensues, the end of the movie comes and everyone's about to be nuked by a missile. As it looms down towards the town, the Iron Giant decides to sacrifice himself and fly fist first up into the missile.
You stay. I go.
I love you.
After a teary goodbye with his best friend, he closes his eyes, flies towards the missile, and says,
Superman.
then dies and everyone is saved. Powerful stuff. But alas, at the very, very end, we see the boy wake up in the night because he hears a knocking sound. Turns out that it was a screw left behind by the Iron Giant, who is being slowly rebuilt bolt by bolt up in the north. Whew. I was stressed out for a second. But 9-year-old me can dry his tears because it turns out that our robot boy is going to be just fine. But even when I was a kid, I didn't forget that that felt a little bit cheap. And so we fast forward to the Avengers. Tony Stark finds himself flying into a wormhole on a mission to save the world. He attempts to call Pepper Potts, but it goes to voicemail. So he leaves the saddest voicemail anyone's ever heard. But before the tears can well up in my eyes, I have this nagging remembering feeling about the Iron Giant. And okay, he didn't die. Alright, well. Fast forward again to Guardians of the Galaxy. Groot's about to use his final move to save all of his friends. This time, even Rocket tells us that he's for sure toast.
You can't. You'll die.
But I watch with skeptical hippo eyes as I think to myself that he's probably just gonna find the Fountain of Youth instead. Star Wars Rise of Skywalker Iron Giant's two of its characters in the same movie. And the reveal that they weren't really dead or amnesed permanently happens like within minutes of you thinking that they were dead in the first place.
What are you doing there, 3PO?
Taking one last look, sir, at my friends.
So I'm trademarking the phrase Iron Gianting when a movie goes for a fake out death so they can get a cheap emotional impact out of you. It's a real pet peeve of mine because now that I anticipate it, I end up losing any of the initial impact they wanted me to have until the credits start rolling. If you've seen my earlier video where Pirates of the Caribbean did a fantastic job of killing Barbossa, then there's kind of a minor version of this when you bring that character back in a sequel. It's still a little better because at least I get to hang on to that emotional impact of them dying in that movie and they don't come back before the credits are over. But all it really does is borrow some time until we do get to that next movie and then it makes you go, oh, come on. So what are some of your pet peeves that have to do with shorthand or cliches? I'd love to hear them in the comments. I'm Chad. Till next time.